haven't had it, we've got Nitro Joe's cold brewed coffee. It's fantastic and it will make you feel alive. So I welcome you to come try it out. And after you feel so alive, there's restrooms. And it is right there on that hallway there, to the right and to the left, and we hope that you find it. And then when you leave, you'll just go out these doors here. You'll notice on the right, we've got your left, our hashtag, Something Brewing ICT, as well as the Twitter handles for the companies that are going to be presenting. I'm so thrilled that you guys are here, and I'm also thrilled to welcome our first presenter. He's going to present for 6 minutes and then question and answer for 15 after that. His name is Adam, and he's with SoCe. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right, so my name is Adam Barlow Thompson, and I'm representing SoCe Life. We are a nonprofit that was started as a people who, we just wanted to find some community together, and we realized really quickly that proximity was really important to that. So we literally moved onto the same block in the South Central neighborhood here in Wichita. And if you know anything about Wichita, which I assume you do, then you'll know that South Central is really known for the South Broadway corridor, which is also known for lots of, well, unsavory things. And so we decided to move right there. Not to participate, y'all, come on, jeez. But because we felt like, what if there's something more to a neighborhood than just its reputation? And what if we could rebrand a neighborhood in a way? And so we started to say, instead of South Central, we are SoCe. And in SoCe, we're gonna seek out the abundance that lives in the people who are already in this community. And so we just started going neighbor to neighbor, door to door, and we started knocking on doors and saying, hey, we're from SoCe Life, and we have a vision of rebranding our neighborhood as a people who are abundant and have something to offer the neighborhood. And so we'd say, what's your vision for the neighborhood? What hobbies or interests do you have? What kind of skills do you have that you'd be willing to share with our neighbors? And one of the first doors we knocked on was a woman named Mary. And Mary was great because she invited us in right away, and we gave her our pitch, and she said, you know, I used to have lots of hobbies. I used to do lots of stuff, but now I'm just really addicted to drugs. And we said, oh. And right off the bat, do we choose to see this woman like other institutions and nonprofits and churches have seen her as just a need, a statistic, an addict? And do we say, well, when you get clean, come call us? Or can we see beyond the obvious need and look for abundance? So we said, well, what else do you do? And she said, well, I used to macrame. And those things you can hang and the pot is in there. And she knows how to do that. She knows how to arrange flowers because she worked in a floral shop, and she, for 25 years, has been going to 12-step programs. And over the last year, we've connected Mary with places where she could share her gifts. We connected her with a craft group that she didn't participate in. She led the craft group. We connected her with a group of college students who were learning about addiction, and she shared with them her struggle in a genuine and authentic way that I could never do. And as she started to see herself different, not just as a need, but as someone who had something to offer, she started to say, maybe I am of value. And she was getting a knee surgery, and my coworker Catherine went to visit her, and a nurse walked in, right? And she gives my coworker Catherine this big smile, because she's a very humorous person, and she looks over at the nurse and she says, so what interests do you have? What are your hobbies? What are you good at? And she starts connecting this woman to places where she could share her gifts, and we realize that neighboring is not just something we can do. Neighboring is a movement. And anyone can be a good neighbor. Anyone can find the abundance in the people who are in front of them and start to share that with other people. And when we go out into our neighborhood, we come back overwhelmed. Not by the giant list of needs that my neighborhood has. Yes, they're there. Yes, we know they're there. But we come back overwhelmed because there is so much abundance that has not been mobilized. It's not been put together in a way that it can be shared. And that's where SoCe Life is stepping in. We have this thing we're calling the Abundant Community Network. It's being used in other cities as well, and it's a real simple idea of systematically increasing neighboring in your community. The blue people are your neighborhood leadership, community organizers, it's neighborhood associations, city council, churches, whatever. The orange people are who they support, and that's my staff. And we go out and we recruit and we train and we support. Each of us are responsible for 50 volunteer block connectors. And the block connector, they just do the same things that Mary did for that nurse. And they draw out the abundance for 15 to 20 households. They put that information into a database and they meet monthly and they say, what's the common vision for our neighborhood? What are common interests that we could draw people around and gather them around these things so they could increase neighborliness in our community? And when you increase neighborliness in a community, it's amazing. It does all of these things that the need-based organizations have been trying to do all along. It reduces crime. It increases access to jobs. It increases elder care. It increases people's ability to trust their community. It lowers child abuse. There's all of these things that we can prove that happen when you increase neighborliness, and now we have a system to do it. So what SoCe Life is up to in your neighborhoods is we're going out to find abundance. We see our neighborhood as the beta of that. We're working with the city to try to get that off the ground. And then as things progress, we hope to launch that citywide and to work with neighborhood associations and other groups to make this, this abundant community network a reality for all of Wichita, and that we might be known as a city who knows how to be a really good neighbor. That's my pitch.
As always, we have about 15 minutes of Q&A. So if you have a question, raise your hand. And we have Rachel over here. Raise your hand, Rachel. She will come to you, Mike, and I will come to you as well. So I got the first question right here.
Hi, I'm curious to know if you're using the Nextdoor app or website to spread your message.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we do use Nextdoor. That's kind of like an informal way of being a neighbor. The database that we use for our block connectors is called The Common Good, and it was developed by Edmonton, Canada, who's already implemented this citywide. And so it's an open source database that they've created, and it fits the needs of us very specifically. And so that's our primary resource. And we're able to keep that private then and also have more information than you can just get from Nextdoor. But Nextdoor is a great way. If you're not on Nextdoor, get it. It's an app. You can download it, and it's a good way of connecting with your neighbors and figuring out what's going on geographically next to you. So, yeah, thank you.
My mother's involved in neighborhood improvement associations in Topeka, and has been very involved in meeting people, getting the leadership, and trying to tie it to available programs, things like that. Is it similar to it? Give me a little bit more about how, could she use this program in Topeka? Is it different than an NIA, or
Great.
Just elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So the most common way, especially in Wichita, I know, that we've tried to impact our neighborhoods is through neighborhood association systems, which is similar to what you're talking about. And those organizations, they do a lot of good work, right? I'm the president of my neighborhood association, a really important role, I must let you know. Here's my beef with that system, is that the neighborhood association, what happens in our neighborhood is that we gather, and the first report, the police come up and they list a bunch of stuff that went wrong, right? Here's all the things that went wrong. The fire department gets up, here's a bunch of stuff that went wrong. And then the neighborhood association gets up and says, we got to fight City Hall so we can get these things, we can get these things. And we spend an hour and a half to 2 hours talking about all the negative stuff happening in our community. The biggest difference for us, when we gather with block connectors, we are pointing to the good things that are happening, the abundance. We're saying, where are these things? Now, who can implement this kind of thing? Anybody. This is free material. We stole everything we have. It's true. And so this is the foundation of this work comes from a theory of interacting with neighborhoods called the asset-based community development. And if you look up abcdinstitute.org, the ABCD Institute is on Northwestern University. They kind of come up with the academic parts that inform what we're doing. This model then was taken from that, and now Edmonton, Canada, this is their stuff. They created those graphics, and they just told us, you can use whatever you want, just go for it. The only thing we had to do is take out the U in neighborhood, because in Canada, they put U's in every place. I don't know what the deal is. So, I guess some of us might be putting U's in more things after last night too, so you never know. So, sorry, that would be too soon, okay. Yeah, but yeah, they can totally use it. And part of our like long-term vision is that we see ourselves helping people implement the Abundant Community Network regionally. So that cities around and municipalities around, and we're a nonprofit, which makes us a little different than what you all are used to maybe. Because we're a nonprofit, we're bivocational. So all of our staff people work multiple places to make our living, which is intentional. It increases our network, and it takes the burden of how much money we have to raise, and it puts it at a lower bar. And so we're trying to keep that way because we see this as something that we don't want to have to sell. Like, I don't feel good about trying to sell neighboring. Like, you guys should be able to do that for free, right? And so we want to keep it that way as much as possible, and we share it with anybody who's willing to listen.
Right here. Who did you vote for yesterday? No, I'm just kidding. Two questions. So I understand you need to have a lower income, but you do need some income. So I didn't quite grasp where you make income support from. And then maybe more importantly, what exactly motivates you?
Okay, yeah. So, okay, let's start with the income stuff first. So the way that we make money is people give us their money. And so we would love for you to do that. And it's all donation based. We started when we got a grant from the Wichita Community Foundation via the Knight Foundation. We got an $18,000 grant, and that kind of kicked off our first year of going out and trying just to get to know do interviews with neighbors. And that funded us for a year, and after that, it was really haphazard the way we were doing it, and we said, there's something here, but we got to organize it better. And that's where we found this. That's going to be now how we organize this. Our first block connector meeting is December 1st, so it's brand spanking new. So our fundraising strategy is very relational. We encourage people to do what we call donor dinners, where they invite their network, and we come and we share with them. So tomorrow night, I'm going to a donor dinner, and this is a particularly good donor dinner because this guy invited 50 people, and I'm so excited to go and share with them. But usually it's like 10, 15 people at a time. We share the story, and we just have a base of people who give us money then, and we have about 120 donors who keep us going. And some of those are larger gifts, so we do have about 5 that give larger gifts of $10,000 or more, and that helps a lot. But what we've broken it down to is that to support each block connector, that's every block, it's $25 a month for every block to keep us going. That's kind of the baseline that we're looking at. And we sell that. If, we try to say, hey, if you want to support a block connector for a year, you can sign up to give $25 a month, and there you go. You're supporting one block. We have 160 blocks, roughly, depending on how you count them. In just my neighborhood, there's 160 blocks. It's 11,000 people, and we hope in 2 years to have that whole thing kind of infiltrated with block connectors. So.
To your left. So with your staff, how many of you are there, and are you all from Wichita, from the neighborhood that you're talking about?
Right. Yeah. Good question. So we have really 3 staff, and then we have 3 interns, right? And so the 2, it's myself and my wife. And then another couple are the founders. My wife does not work for the nonprofit, but the other couple have lived in the neighborhood for about 8 years. All right, yeah, 8 years. So they've lived in that neighborhood for 8 years. Before that, they were Friends students, so they lived in Wichita before that, and then before that, they were not from Kansas. I grew up in Salina, and so I moved to Wichita after grad school, and so I've been here for 6 years now.
And then, because I have the microphone, I'm going to ask my second question.
That's right.
I haven't been here for 2 weeks, so I get like 10 questions. Are you planning to scale this beyond the SoCe neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely. We hope that after the first year, we will be able to scale that. We're talking with the city. We really want city leadership to own this. Our city council person is James Glendenin, and he's like all in behind us on this. and he's a great guy, and I'm excited for him because he's championing it for us within the city ranks. It works best if your city is behind it. And so, and ideally what happens is that it becomes ingrained in the city in a way that it's not so costly. Because once you get it started, the block connectors are volunteer, and once they're in place, the work of the orange person becomes a lot easier if you're not having to recruit and train all the time. So yeah, we hope that it will go citywide. We've already had other neighborhood associations who've approached us and say, hey, can we be a beta too? Because would be really great for us. So we'll continue to see as people are willing, we want to do that.
So the gentleman over there asked you a two-part question, and the second one was what motivates you to do all
I
this?
forgot.
Because I don't think you're going to get very rich doing this.
You don't know. All right, so what motivates me? All right, confession time. I am an ordained United Methodist pastor. And so, what motivates me, we started this because we were a bunch of Christians who were kind of like, the funny thing is, so we all worked in churches. And we worked in churches and we looked at our lives and we were like, oh God, this is not what I thought I got into. Because when you work in a church, if you're not familiar with it, what your life gets made up of is a ton of meetings. I got to go to a trustees meeting and a finance meeting, and I got to go to a Wednesday night program and a Saturday morning program, and it felt like I was just shuffling papers on my desk instead of actually doing the things that I was inspired to become a pastor for, right? And I wanted to be a good neighbor, because so I'm going to get all Christianese on you. If you don't like it, just close your ears, it's fine. So in Scripture, when there's this very popular Bible verse called "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us," right? It's from 1 John, or John 1, sorry. And if you look at the Message paraphrase of that, it says, "The Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood." And I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do, but I can't because I have to keep going to church meetings. That's so annoying. And so I said, I quit my job and said, I'm not going to do that anymore. And so, so I'm no longer a pastor in a church. In the United Methodist Church, you get appointed to a congregation, and I have been appointed to my neighborhood. And that, for me, just feels right on the money with why I got into this thing in the first place. So. Thank you.
Questions back row?
Me again. You told the story of a woman named Mary and how she connected to her neighborhood and got involved in a hobby, and you didn't come right out and say what impact, if any, that had on her addiction struggle. Is there any data to suggest that if people are really immersed and invested in their neighborhoods and active in a hobby, that they don't backslide as much, or that they're more successful in their recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. There's new research coming about addiction all the time. I'm sure some of you may know more about this than I do. But one of the leading factors for overcoming addiction is community. And it's proven again and again. I mean, that's why 12-step programs work, is because of the community. And so, yeah, absolutely. And community that's able to see the person for their whole self and not just this one problem that they bring to the table.
Question right in front of you.
Yes?
I know you're working with person-to-person kinds of relationships. Are you planning on working with person and absentee person in some of these areas? Because so many of the neighborhoods are dealing with absentee neighbors, owners, bad property, things that they would like to be able to do but can't because they're prevented by circumstances surrounding them. Is that something that's in your future?
I'm not sure I completely understand what you mean by absentee. I mean, you're talking about landlords who aren't there?
Yeah, you can sort of look at it that way. I know a lot of people who have lived south of Kellogg for a long time.
Right.
And, there's issues, there's things that they would do if they could get buy-in by the other people, like particularly
Okay, yeah.
improvement in their housing and their residential, and
Sure.
the things that they would like to be able to do to make their neighborhood more habitable for their children.
Right.
And to improve their living circumstances, but they keep running into kind of roadblocks. Can you be some assistance in that if it's
Right.
just a face for some of these people?
Yeah, okay, so I guess there's two parts to that. So part of what our founding belief is that every person is gifted and they experience wholeness when they share their gifts. It's really hard when you walk up to some doors to say, every person is gifted. Every person is gifted, right? It's not easy. Yeah, right? Like, that's our first thing we do with the training for the block connectors is like, how do you see this person is gifted, even when at face, it doesn't feel that way? I think our world needs that right now, folks, like in a big way. And so that's the first part of it. You draw people in by their giftedness, not by pointing out the things that are wrong in their yard.
Exactly.
So if you can buy in that way, they start, yes, there is research to show that they will have more ownership for their neighborhood, and that's going to help. The second part of that was really insightful, but I lost it, so. I'll email you when we get it.
As far as from, you're talking about connecting a woman with her creative skills of some type.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing to I guess, solicit, for lack of a better word, groups and organizations to come to you to say, hey, we're looking for people that want to get involved in that kind of, in this case, need to get involved?
Yeah.
What are you doing from that angle?
Great question. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out right now, and this will lead into what I'm asking for from the city of Wichita, is we're looking for ways to measure our work. We are not creating new programs, right? We want to increase financial literacy. I'm not going to create a financial literacy program. So what we are measuring is how many people can we refer to programs that already exist in our city. So we're looking for nonprofits and other organizations who we can say, we've referred 20 people to Workforce Alliance in this year, or we've referred 30 people to the Circles program, which is a poverty initiative in our city. So we're trying to figure out how we can refer people and use that as one of our metrics instead of we create new programming to try to fix all the problems, because we don't have the resources to do that anyways, and those other things are great, so why would we not just use them?
What other programs in the community are you looking to connect with programs?
Yes, great question. So here's the three things that we would like to measure our impact. Safety, which is measured through crime reduction, and if you have connections with, like, one of the things we're floating right now is, what if every block connector helps their block lead a neighborhood watch program? And so if you have experience with Neighborhood Watch, I don't, but I'd love to know your experience with that and how to get people involved in that, or like how to measure crime. I really want to be able to measure crime block by block. I have no clue how to do that. And so I'm looking for organizations that are experienced with the data side of understanding crime. The next part of that is economic development. We want to measure our economic development. So we have already seen this informal network of referrals that happen in our neighborhood. My neighborhood, I had no clue, is full of these highly trained chefs. We didn't know that until we started going out and meeting people. And so there's this woman in our neighborhood, she's a Cuban immigrant. She speaks English, but she is not completely all the way there and has some barriers language-wise. And so that's kept her from getting gigs, because it's hard to do that when you don't have that network. But we've been able to connect her to places where she can do catering gigs. And then we track how much money she makes, and that's one of the ways we measure our economic development. So people who, we're going to try to continue to build this network of here's people in my neighborhood who do housework, who are caterers, who whatever, and connect people that way. And then the other piece of economic development is helping people understand poverty and how to get out of poverty. So organizations, excuse me, that work with poverty and have initiatives to help people come out of that, those are groups that we want to get with. And then the last one that we're working on is trust. How do we build a neighborhood that trusts each other? And so if you work in, if you're like, one of the things we'd love is to get together with academic people, like at Wichita State, who are in sociology departments or political organizing departments, stuff like that. We want to know about how you measure trust in a neighborhood. We're going to be measuring it by interaction. How many interactions do we have in the neighborhood? Every month, the neighborhood, the orange person is supposed to call all of their block connectors. That's one interaction. The block connector is supposed to go and talk to each of their neighbors every month. Those are more interactions. We count those, and we start counting that towards our trust category. So safety, economic development, and trust are the three things that we think this will improve. And if you can help us measure those things in your organization, if you can do that, we would love your help. Right here?
Just contact information.
Contact information, just holler. Right. We our website is SoCeLife.org, so SoCeLife.org. You can get us there. You can find us on Facebook. We're most active on Facebook. I was laughing when you put our Twitter account up because we have one. I think we have like 7 people who follow us. 8? Okay, thanks.
I just followed. So
yeah,
there's 9.
There we go. We do like our blog posts go up there. We have a consistent blog that we use to share stories from the neighborhood. And then, yeah, the website's the best way. You can get all of our information there. I have cards. I have some flyers that I'll put back here if you want to see what's going on with that. So.
Question in the back?
With the asset-based community development approach versus a more traditional approach where you're bringing in resources, what you're really doing is playing a very long game, building from the inside out, and the wins aren't always apparent. What are some failures that you've experienced, and how do you overcome that?
Oh, man. Who invited this guy? Oh, man, there are so many. So one of the biggest failures that we saw is that we originally stole a model from a church in Indianapolis who was doing this, and they have a very informal approach. So they just walk around the neighborhood, they gather information, and they do it all analog when they get back, right? And so they come back and they have this room, it's like maybe like half of this room, and it's filled with like whiteboards and poster paper, and they just like make notes to each other. They call their people roving listeners. And the roving listeners just come up and they make notes and then they just connect people using that information. And we were like, this is so cool, like it feels so grassrootsy and fun. So we started doing it that way, and I don't know, 3 months into it, we were going, this is miserable. I don't know where any of my data is. I don't know anybody who I visited. I know there's some person who likes playing music on some block, but I can't find them. What do I do with that? And so that took us some time to overcome. That was one mistake. And then one of the other mistakes was just not seeing abundance that was right in front of us. Because as a pastor, I've been trained in a needs-based approach, right? So usually when I come in, I look for needs and try to fix it. And every time we try to do that, we would screw it up and it wouldn't work. So there's lots of stories about that, but I don't know how much time I really have, so.
In the back on your left.
Maybe I missed this up front. How large of an area do you cover, or certain boundaries that you're dealing with down there?
Yep, great. So right now we are defining SoCe by our neighborhood association, which is the South Central Neighborhood Association. It goes from Kellogg to Pawnee and from Washington to the river, which is 11,000 houses. It's one of the biggest neighborhood associations that we have in the city. And we're starting our work on the north side of that, just from Lincoln to Kellogg. So,
All right, well, every week at 1 Million Cups, we have one last question we like to ask each presenter, and that is, what can we as a Wichita community do for you?
Awesome. I made a slide for this one. Okay, so the first thing, we have this theory that neighboring produces more neighboring. And so the very first thing you can do for us is be a good neighbor. Here's how you do it. 3-step approach, because I love 3 steps. First, you have to seek abundance in the people who you disagree with most with, in the people who seem to have nothing to offer. You have to find what's abundant in them. Second, you have to engage with these people. It's not enough just to meet them once. How many people live on your block? Do you know their names? That's the first step. Then connect people to other people. So the way you can do that is you can say, hey, neighbor John, did you know that neighbor Mary was looking for somebody to clean out her gutters, and I know you got a ladder, would you be willing to help me with that? Right? That's so easy. It's so easy. And yeah, he might say no. Doesn't matter. You still engaged him. It counts. And now he knows that that person's name's Mary. Maybe he doesn't know anything else about her, but he knows that. So be a good neighbor. Please be a good neighbor. Next, we really want help studying our work. Imagine this, if you will, right? That our city has a block connector on every block. That person has a background check, has been trained to spot abuse and report abuse. That person knows the neighbors on their street. That person is able to connect people based on their giftedness. Imagine all the benefits that could come from that. I am not a researcher, but I feel like if I was, I would want to study the heck out of that thing and then come up with a really cool paper that I could put for people who like papers. So if you're that person, come find me and help me study this. Get ready for the citywide scale up, and if you're active in your neighborhood already, and you have a neighborhood association you're a part of, or some group or community that you meet with on a regular basis who's trying to be a good neighbor, let me come and talk to them. Let me give my spiel for them as well. Follow us online. Our Facebook account is our most active place, and we have some cool little videos there and some things that you can check out if you want. So facebook.com/SoCe Life, or the website as well. And then, of course, I didn't put it up here, but I mean, donations are appreciated. If you would sponsor a block connector, that gets us really far down the road. For you to say, you know what, that's $300 for a year, over a year. That's not hard to do. So if you would do that for us, you can give online, SoCeLife.org, and yeah, those are the things. So
Cool. Can we give a round of applause for Adam? That was awesome. Thank you. So every presenter gets an awesome 1 Million Cups cup. This is 1 in a million.
Thank you, sir.
Here you go.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So now it's time usually for announcements. My name's Benny. I'm usually the silent sound guy over there, and I'm the kind of guy that has to ask my wife, what's going on this weekend again? So I'm not the guy to say announcements. But today I was pretty darn inspired by Adam's pitch, or whatever you want to call it. And I just wanted to, we didn't really have a plan for announcements, and so this is kind of a spur of the moment thing. I'm going to cite some numbers from Kansas in yesterday's vote. That's kind of weird, but 57% of Kansans voted for Trump, 36% voted for Clinton, 5% for Johnson, and 2% for Stein. That's from an undisclosed media network, because it doesn't matter. But what I just wanted to say, just as a follow-up to what Adam said, is that 100% of Kansans need to be connected to 100% of Kansans. And I really believe that, and I really believe in what he's doing here. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you believe. I'm really pumped about what he's doing, and it seems like everyone else is in here too. So just on a day like today, I think it would be cool for us to kind of take this into the rest of our day. So I think that's all I have for announcements. You need to say anything? bring up the next person.
I got hard to follow. As always, startupwichita.com/events is the best place to go for the events. I'm not going to pull it up today. One thing I did want to note, if you guys want to receive updates from 1 Million Cups, we actually have an app now. So I'm not sure if anybody who here has actually downloaded the 1 Million Cups app. Maybe like 6. So if you want to, just go to the App Store and 1 Million Cups, you can actually select Wichita as your community, and you'll receive updates from us every week. So you can go there instead of going to the website. It's used presenting, get notifications, those sort of things. So feel free to do that. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up our next presenter. She actually has her truck outside, so you guys can see that. But I'm going to introduce Marty with Songbird Juice Company.
You told me how to work this thing. I don't know about anybody else, but I needed that this morning. My name is Marty. I'm with Songbird Juice Company, and I'm just going to jump right in. We are Wichita's original cold pressed juicery. We opened last September. And just a little bit of history as to why we opened. I was a little girl that grew up in a garden, and I grew up in Roseville, Kansas. My grandpa had a huge garden. And I could just walk out there. I remember he kept a little rusty knife by the garden. And I could walk out there and I could cut off anything I wanted. And I used to go out and get tomatoes. And I would just brush them on my leg and I would eat them. Maybe a little salt. He kept a salt and pepper shaker out there too. I could eat green beans while I was picking the okra. I had my own strawberry patch. He had an orchard, so I could go out and pick my own pears and my own strawberry, or I can't pick strawberries from trees, my own cherries. And I remember these things, and I remember how accessible clean food was, nutritious food was. So flash forward to 2016, and the garden is gone, unfortunately. I have children, a career, and a busy lifestyle, and for the most part, my world is full of mom guilt, chicken nuggets, and donuts. So that said, I was complaining, because that's what people do sometimes, to my husband one night, and I was like, I just don't understand why we don't have more healthy options here. I feel like we can do better, because we all deserve good food. And so came the dream of something better, Songbird Juice Company. Just a little bit of Kansas statistics. I was kind of appalled to hear this, and I knew it, but I fall into this category some days. So the CDC reports that 41.8% of adults in Kansas eat no fruit, or maybe one piece of fruit a day. And 22.9% of them eat one vegetable or no vegetables a day. I think the results to that are pretty parallel. Adolescents are pretty close to the same, only I feel like we've still got a chance with them with their obesity and their weight. So we're talking about a third of Americans not accessing nutritious food every day. It doesn't take a genius to know what healthy food looks like. Kind of find it in the produce department. Walk into any grocery store and you can walk right to it. It doesn't come down the aisles, and we know that. We learned that in health class. We know that raw food, which is where Songbird Juice Company falls, is uncooked and unprocessed. It's loaded with vitamins and minerals and enzymes. It's where you're going to get a lot of your nourishment. And it's not pasteurized, which means it breaks down. It doesn't sit in your back seat and never decompose for 3 years. You know, Mom. So I get this question a lot, why juice? I'm still busy. My life hasn't changed. In fact, I've just added to it. So when I would travel, one of the things I would always look for was a juice bar. And that was because I knew I could get nutrient-dense foods, and I could get them quickly, and I could keep going on with my day. It was also something I could feel really good about. So if I ate really terrible that morning, I was going to have a juice for lunch. And then maybe not a healthy dinner. Is there a commercial that used to go like that? So juice for me was something that I thought we needed here. So Juice does this. You get your calorie reduction without those nutrient deprivations. You get loaded nutrients, lots of micronutrients. It promotes healthy eating habits. You know, you can change your palate in 10 to 14 days by just consuming raw produce, fruits and vegetables, juice, smoothies, good clean food. You can actually change the way your palate craves. And you're flooded with micronutrients. Our cold press technique is a little bit different than your countertop model. We actually have a technique that doesn't compromise the produce by heating it up, which is what your countertop models usually do. It's a slow press process between 2 stainless plates at 12 tons of pressure. We then go ahead and bottle that after straining out the sticks and stems, and we give you just the good stuff. We use mindfully sourced ingredients, so we abide by the Clean 15 Dirty Dozen Environmental Working Group standards. We locally source as available, and our blends are very unique, so you can see there that we are using things like wheatgrass and ginger and turmeric. Quick journey. Songbird Juice Company's been open a year, and it feels like it's been open for 22. So we opened, we dreamed about it. We opened in September 2015 after construction. We started construction in April. Of course, we know sometimes that gets pushed back. We started bottling juice. We realized we were going to bottleneck if we didn't get a bigger juicer. So we jumped that hurdle, went back to the table with some folks in Wichita, and then we started bottling bulk amounts of juice. And then, oh surprise, we had a baby. And, whoops, no, it was a blessing. Then we went to the farmer's market. Wow, the farmer's market. And then we blew projections out of the water. Sked's in the room. He's still really proud of us for that. And then, like we couldn't get any more complicated, we bought a truck. So that's sitting outside for samples after. So that's a little bit about Songbird Juice Company and our journey. Our mission in Wichita is just to provide wellness and nourishment and easy food that you can feel really good about. I don't want it to be complicated. I want it to be relatable. So with that, I just want to open it up and if you have questions about juice. I have so much information and I didn't want to bore you with all the details of it, but I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited that Wichita, Kansas has some really great offerings, and I think more of that is stimulating. So the more you guys want it, the more we're going to be here.
Let's give Marty a round of applause. Again, raise your hands if you have a question, and Rachel, I will come to you. So who wants to ask the first one?
How many full servings are in each bottle?
So each 16-ounce bottle that we serve is a full serving. It's one full serving. That said, because most of our diets aren't made up of 2 to 2.5 pounds of produce every day, I would always advise people that are new to juicing to ease into that. So maybe just do half a bottle in the morning and maybe see how it goes, and then half a bottle in the afternoon. The beauty of raw foods is that they do good things for your body. So some people get those confused with reactions, but it's normal. So you should be processing food, just like food decomposes. Your body should be processing food the same way. Think back to a baby. I know, I'm trying not to go there. I'm really trying not to go there. I have a newborn. I could relate raw food to that all day long. Right? But it should be really basic and really simple. So if your body is not feeling that way, not processing food that way, then there's probably something wrong. You need more fruits and vegetables.
Question.
Yeah.
Yes, I noticed most of your products are juice blends. What is the process for determining what blend we're going to produce next?
Oh, it's all how I'm feeling that day. It is seasonality. That's the other thing about Kansas. We have 4 seasons. Our ingredients, when I first opened, I was like, I'm going to do all this local food, and I forgot about the garden and how we didn't have that in the winter. So a lot of our stuff is seasonal. I'm mindful in how I source things. I don't want to go too far to get produce, but we use all of our organics. I'm from Texas, and they let me know where they're shipping those from at any given time. So a lot of our greens, we just partnered with Cheney Farms, who does hydroponics out of Yoder, and they're at the farmer's market, so they have greenhouses. You can do that all year long. So our greens are pretty stationary. We're able to kind of keep those all year. Things like apples and pears, more cold weather crops, we change those up, and we might sweeten with pineapples in the summer, and then we'll sweeten with pears in the winter. So it's how we feel, it's how we think our bodies should feel. Things like turmeric and ginger. While I'll never claim that food will cure you, I know, again, how it makes me feel. So my turmerics and my gingers are, for winter months, whenever I have that cough or congestion, I need ginger. That's what I want, and that's what my body wants, and that's going to help me kind of kick that cold if I can. Turmeric, inflammation. So we try to put benefit in a bottle. That's what we're going for. What can benefit you the most in that bottle without diluting it?
Question in the back to your left.
So I know you have a passion for helping us not buy chicken nuggets, and you just have the food truck now, but what are your plans for making it easier access for us to get all those nutritional supplements from your juice in our diet?
I appreciate that question. That's one of the reasons we bought the truck, because originally when we started growing the way we were, we realized there was a demand for this product. We thought, how are we going to get this east and west and north and south? And we can't do that in 1 year. There's no way we can build all those kiosks. So we bought a truck, and I joke we bought a zoo, but we really just bought a truck. And it's a '67 Chevy, and it's really fun to work on. But we take that truck out wherever we can, and we want to partner with people that also have wellness desires and yoga studios and bliss bouldering, and we partner with Go Time, and we partner with so many places that believe in that wellness mission that we want to deliver that as a destination together. So that right now is what we're looking at, but I think the idea is that we'd like to take this all over Sedgwick County and beyond if we can. I think everybody deserves to have access to something they can feel good about. Because I'll tell you, my kid the other day was not feeling so good in the back seat of the car. It's because she had a Fun Dip for breakfast. And right under the bus. And she goes, I don't feel so good, Mom. I said, well, what can I do to help you? And she goes, well, a Happy Meal will make me feel better. And I thought, oh, we just had a drive-through. I just kept thinking, why doesn't Songbird have a drive-through yet? But yeah, so we just want to put them in places that's easy for people to get to. I honestly believe that people will. If you put it in front of them, they will access it. But I end up at the corner of some of those metered intersections some days going, okay, we just need calories. What's it going to be today? And I just don't have those options.
Comment?
So I'm curious, I would imagine that you're substantially more expensive than like a Naked Juice. So I'm curious how you compete, and then also what are your margins? And not that we need to know specifically all the numbers, but you know.
That's a great question. So he asked about Naked Juices and some of those cold pressed juices that you can buy in Whole Foods and Dillon's. Those are high pressure pasteurized juices. So the content has been broken down. You're going to see a lot more fructose on that bottle because it's already decomposed in the bottle by nature. Because they have bulk buying power more so than I do, are able to keep their prices a little bit lower. But it's not a raw product. So our prices for a 16-ounce bottle is $8.50, which is actually pretty reasonable compared to a lot of the juice I bought on the coast being a $12 bottle. Know that you are getting about 2 to 2.5 pounds of produce in that bottle. I don't know how many people in here have ever juiced at home. Okay, so it's quite a mess. And I go out and I do a juice 101, and it takes forever, and then by the time you get your juice, you still have to clean it up. And you're like, I don't really want it that bad anymore. Just put the ego in. So we take the mess and the murk out of it, and we bottle it. You can come in. Most of our juices have a 3 to 5 day shelf life. We don't do any additives, so the shelf life depends on citrus content. And then we do a lot of photos in the shop, of course, of what maybe 2 pounds of produce looks like. So it's 2/3 of a pineapple in that bottle of generosity. And so if you're not used to that much nutrition, your body's gonna thank you for that. I promise you.
So what's your 2-year goal?
My 2-year goal? That is such a great question. I think right now, trying to get the truck mobilized is my goal for year 2 and getting it out there. when I say we blew projections out of the water, we were very conservative in our numbers. Dwayne's in here from SCED, and he works with me pretty closely on that stuff. We were very conservative in our numbers, and I could not believe the farmers markets and the demand east and west. I get a lot of emails and requests to come out to those locations, so I think we're just going to use this truck to see where Wichita needs us, and based on that, we're going to use that kind of as a scouting tool, and maybe we'll look at locations too.
On your left.
Yeah.
You mentioned working with other groups. I know Dr. Josh comes over and speaks, and I'm sure you're working with other ones. Is there an opportunity for maybe some of this juice at his facility? Have you looked at partnering with them to actually turn them into an outlet?
That's a great question, and it's one I get often. Going back to us falling into the raw foods category, wholesaling is really difficult unless I compromise my product and I decide to pasteurize it. Because I don't want to do that, I'm trying to kind of find that loophole. And regulations, I think we work really hard to set the bar high. As the first in Wichita, we work closely with our inspectors and folks to try to show them that this is something we could easily take out and just regulate if we had those kiosk systems. So I'm hoping that there could be some changes in that and the regulations so that we could take that out. As of right now, the most I can do with a raw product is that I can take it to you. I can sell at a certain time with my cafe license or my truck license, and that's what I've got. But high pressure pasteurization would compromise the rawness of the bottle.
Question in the back row.
Hey, so I've been to your shop, and I'm by the way, you guys should go try the acai bowls. They're really good. They're like ice cream, it's just a lot healthier. So, well, I think they are. I don't know.
They are.
Like beyond the 2-year goal, are you thinking your model might include some type of franchising or like outside of? Because I'm guessing probably the market here in Sedgwick might be saturated after maybe 1 or 2 stores, and then in Sedgwick County, and then if you try to expand even more than that, you're probably going to have to look outside the state or even some of the big metro areas. So I mean, did you guys start thinking about that a little bit?
I think we started thinking about everything. I think we've just kind of encompassed every conversation we can have about growth. We've proven concept. We've proven that we could replicate this, and we've proven there's a demand. Some of the conversations we had were, will it be just juice that we put out there? And upon analysis, I realized that people actually love our smoothies and our solubles just as much. So we're like a package deal. We have to go with everything. We can't just do juice. If you go out to the coast, you can find kiosks where cold pressed juiceries have maybe a commercial area where they're pressing and then they're sending those bottles out on trucks each day. And then you can walk into a very small store that's just refrigerators and one person behind the counter, and that's all juice, and they can just get their juice and leave. I don't believe that would sustain here. I could be wrong, but based on what we've done this past year and looking at our numbers, I believe we have to be a whole deal. So franchising is certainly something we've talked about. A little bit of a control. I mean, this is my baby, so so just making sure that this is something I can do. Going on maternity leave taught me, because we found out, we opened the doors and then found out 2 months later that we were pregnant again. And I think I had just said, this would be the worst possible timing. And the beauty of it is that it taught me really quickly how to pull a team together. And it taught me that I don't actually have to be there. I can work mobily. And so I set the business up to work that way. So I believe that it could be franchised. It's just the interest and the right partners.
Do all the juices have the same shelf life? So if I buy some, can I keep it in the refrigerator for 2 months, or what's my time?
I didn't recommend that. They all have the same shelf life. They do. They're all 3 to 5. Well, they all have a date. So we date, label, and warning everything. And the FDA requires a little warning on the bottle that says this is raw. So we make sure that everything on that bottle you need to know is on it. So it's got the date on the top, and that's the best by date. I've had people say they drink it past. I just close my ears. I don't really talk about that. Best by date is best by date. I would recommend drinking it Best By. It's usually 5 days. There's a couple, like pineapple, apple mint. People have drank it longer. I always compare it to if you take a bite of an apple and then you put it on the counter in the refrigerator and then you come back a couple days, you take another bite of that apple, it's going to taste differently. The bottle of juice is not any different. We've not compromised anything in that bottle. Our press process is so slow. I mean, it literally goes through the tunnel, it chops once, goes into a Kevlar bag that's food grade, and it presses between those stainless plates at 12 tons of pressure so slowly that you just see it kind of like just bleed out, like purple. We did a charisma, and we call it purple rain because it's just so beautiful. It's got this red cabbage juice. When in your life would you drink red cabbage juice? And you just look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, I mean, it's the nutrients. And then we blended that with orange and pineapple juice and ginger, and it's one of our best sellers this fall. Those kinds of things are going to decompose the exact same way, so you're going to drink it at 10 days. I mean, it's just like you cut up a salad, you would come back 2 days later and eat it. Once you open the bottle, 24 hours is recommended because air hits the produce and then it starts to oxidize. So this is a raw product. This is food. This is what food should be.
In the back to your, no, hold on 1 second. In the back to your left.
How do you go about controlling the source or sources of your product, your fruits, those types of things, and how do you, to make sure that they're, really what you want to use in your product?
That is a really great question. Sourcing has been a journey for us. I think originally when we opened, we kind of got into the buzzword category of everything has to be organic, or everything is locally sourced, or everything is this. And I was grateful that the first thing I started doing with my producers and my suppliers was asking for sourcing standards. And when I started reading those, I started realizing that maybe they're not certified organic, but they're almost cleaner than. And so I actually go to a lot of the farms, or I sit down and I meet with people that have visited the farms. And we talk about that. We talk about the distance that it travels. So you'll see a Cisco truck pull up, but it has all of our Fresh Point organics on it. So, I mean, that's what's coming on that truck, but they do that so that Fresh Point isn't driving all the way up here. I mean, that's our point of distribution. So we're just mindful. I mean, we're not trying to go so far for pineapples that it's worse for the pineapple to travel here than it would have been if we had just gotten it a little bit closer to home. Pineapples don't grow here, so they are going to come on a truck. Something that, when I say we're mindfully sourced, we aren't. We are practical. We're practical in our food. With our locally sourced stuff, we are very strict on standards. You'd be surprised with some of the folks that are growing, how many use some of the older farm standards, and make sure you're asking questions at your farmer's market about what's on your food. It's a good question to ask. I mean, you can just kind of say, hey, is there Roundup on your food? And then we'll say yes or no, and then you'll know. But we just converse with them. We get to know our farmers. We get to know our suppliers. All of our wheatgrass is local. Our greens are local. Our apples at any given time are local, depending on who we're sourcing from. As soon as we picked them, so we got a great crop from Grandpa's orchard this year. I knew that was clean. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
Well, with that, we'll finish with the final question. What can we as a Wichita community do for you?
Look, I did a slide too. I heard that was trendy. Okay, so partner with us. Wellness opportunities are right in front of us with conversations we have with folks, with our employees, with our communities. Partner with us to help us bring the juice truck out. If you think that that's something that maybe would be a good fit for an event, I mean, certainly there are times when it's not appropriate, but there are a lot of times that it can be. 5Ks and yoga studios and gyms and fruit fairs. I mean, this is great stuff for kids. This is stuff I feel good about feeding my kids. My kids at any given day will walk in and grab a green juice. I'm like, proud mom moment. That's what we're trying to go for, is things that's normal for them. So that's their grandpa's garden. Samplings and demonstrations, we're always open to that. If you have like a wellness fair with your employees and you just want us to come out and do a sampling and an education one-on-one, we would love to. We don't have to sell anything. We just want to have that conversation about what raw food looks like and start to let people know it's not scary. It's right in your produce aisle. And then if you have questions for us, you can always email us. We want to grow. If you have some insight on how we can make that happen, there's a science to it, and while we try to work it out, I'm just one person, and I have a small team, and we do our best to keep up with the truck and the one business, but I think this is something that a lot of people want, and I think we'd be happy to have one on every corner.
Let's give Marty a round of applause. Here you go, the one of a kind, 1 in a million, 1 million cup.
Thank you. Oh, yes, and there's our juice truck outside with juice samples. So if you're curious about some of those fun blends, they're on the truck. Just go out and they're going to just sample out while you guys leave today. So.
Well, with that, exit out that door and go get a sample. So we'll see you guys next week.